Jamestown and Plymouth Plantation give us the story of how two English colonies began in America, but also show us how the beginning of the United States of America was exceptional, formed by religious faith and free market principles. Jamestown was founded primarily by people who risked their lives for better economic opportunities in a largely unknown place. It was financed by investors who pooled their money together to form a corporation. Plymouth Plantation was founded mainly by religious people who wanted to practice their faith in their own way, out of reach of Great Britain's religious restrictions. In both colonies, the settlers faced unbelievable hardships and suffered greatly. During the first few years, both colonies were run on a communal model, with the land owned by one company and the work and profits shared by all, regardless of individual effort and accomplishment. After each colony faced utter defeat, with over half dying in the first years, the leaders of both colonies decided to leave the communal model and give each settler his own land, and each settler then profited individually from his own labor. This change saved both Jamestown and Plymouth Plantation. Both of these colonies faced complete failure, and both decided on the same remedy that brought them success: free market principles. The first successful English colony in North America was the 1607 settlement of Jamestown in the colony of Virginia. Seeing the riches Spain was taking from North and South America, the English wanted to join in. But instead of being led by the English government, the English colonies received their start from private citizens through a type of business called a joint stock company. Individual investors founded the London Company in 1607 and received approval from King James I to found a settlement in Virginia. The company chose a governor, and colonists were employees. Most were gold-seeking gentlemen adventurers who thought physical labor beneath them. When they arrived in April, flowers bloomed along the James River, but the settlers took months to decide on a place to build a settlement, and by then it was too late for them to plant crops. Instead of a paradise, the land of America was a nightmare for the first settlers of Jamestown. Out of 120 colonists, more than 2/3 died the first winter. They died of malnutrition, malaria, other diseases, and brackish water, and were attacked by Indians who viewed the English as another tribe to oppose. In 1608, Captain John Smith assumed control of Jamestown and imposed military discipline. He made this rule: "He who will not work will not eat." Smith organized raids against Indians, which brought the settlers food, but also more hatred towards them. But in the second winter, in 1608, less than 15% of the settlers died. After that winter, Smith was injured and sent back to England. In the winter of 1609, the settlers experienced the harshest conditions imaginable. The London Company, now called the Virginia Company, had sent ships from England bringing people and supplies, increasing the population to nearly 500. There was not enough food for the people, and the Indians, intent on destroying the new settlement, attacked anyone who stepped outside. Settlers ate everything possible that winter, known as the starving time. Their meals were rats, mice, snakes, toadstools, horses, and even dead humans. When a supply ship arrived in the spring of 1610, only 60 of the 490 settlers were still alive. For the next 5 years, Sir Thomas Dale, a cruel and exacting man, led Jamestown. He drove away some of the Indians and built fortifications. He punished settlers for not working hard enough by whippings and putting them to work in irons or chains for years. Those who rebelled were executed by being tortured, starved to death, or burned to death. Pocahontas is perhaps the most well-known of the Indians during the beginnings of Jamestown. She was one of Chief Powhatan's hundreds of children, but reportedly she was his favorite. As a child, Pocahontas had played with the boys within Jamestown. When she was a young woman of 16, English Captain Samuel Argall paid Indian chief Japazaws a copper kettle to capture her. The Jamestown settlers held Pocahontas captive so Chief Powhatan would stop attacking the settlers. In Jamestown, Pocahontas chose to become a Christian and was baptized. John Rolfe married her. They had a son, and Pocahontas went to England, where she was treated as a princess. On her return voyage to America, Pocahontas sadly died of tuberculosis. The first settlers of Jamestown believed they would find gold treasures that matched or surpassed those found by the Spanish among the Aztecs and Incas, but there was little or no gold to be found. However, the Indians introduced them to a plant that came to be the moneymaker of Virginia and other southern colonies: tobacco. Tobacco is an addictive stimulant that can be sniffed, chewed, or smoked. It soon became very popular in Europe and was a very popular drug in America until about the 1980s. In November of 1618, everything changed for the people of Jamestown and the Virginia colony when the Virginia Company granted a Great Charter to the people living in Virginia. Before the Great Charter, a common warehouse fed and clothed everyone, which was a disincentive to work because the laziest man received the same amount as the most industrious. There was never enough food, and life was harsh under the military laws, making Virginia a very unpopular place to go. Under the new Great Charter of Virginia, the colonists were allowed a voice in their government. Virginia was granted a governor, a council, and a general assembly. The property holders of Virginia elected the General Assembly, known as the House of Burgesses. It was the first group of elected lawmakers in North American history. In 1623, the Virginia Company went bankrupt, and after that, the King of England chose the governor and the council. Virginia had the freest people in the world outside of England. Everywhere else, a ruler dictated to the people what they had to do. In Jamestown, free government in America was born. The Great Charter of Virginia also contained major changes involving private property and how an individual could support himself. It divided the land of Virginia into farms, and each man received the right to own land and work for himself. Immediately, industrious people in Virginia set out to work, and their colony saw huge improvements in its economy. Virginia became an attraction for many English people. In England, land was scarce and extremely expensive, and in Virginia, every owner of land had the right to vote. These two aspects made Virginia and America exceptions to the worldwide rule. Nowhere else could a person of humble means own land, prosper, and vote. In 1619, 1 year after the Great Charter, two major social changes came to Virginia. Women arrived, and slave traders brought African slaves. Unlike the French, the English colonists normally would not marry Indian women. The arrival of English females meant the colony would grow on its own. To marry, a man had to gain consent from a woman, and then he had to pay her passage from England with 150 pounds of tobacco. With the arrival of slaves began the divisive slave issue in America that ended with the Civil War over 200 years later.